Greetings.
I'm sure the
Greetings, Chair.
Chief Whip pleases. If it pleases the Chief Whip, we will go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much. We are ready.
Chief Whip.
Good afternoon,
Chair.
Can
We are ready, Chair. Thank you very much.
Can I also just check if I'm audible?
You are Deputy Minister.
Thank you.
There's no sound, where is it?
The Deputy Minister is cutting his head. Please, can somebody frame him? Okay. Yes, sir. Thanks. Okay.
The sound. Huh? Oh, I see. No, but this is the one that works.
Take themselves.
Okay. Chief Whip, I guess we should start.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Agreed, Chair. You can start now. Chair, we are ready to start. Thank you very much.
I guess we should start.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, we should start, Chair.
Hope one is audible. Greetings to everybody. As is the tradition, I'll start by bowing to my right and then bowing to my left. I'll therefore, at this point in time, request delegates to observe a moment of silence for prayer and meditation. Thank you very much. Let me also take this opportunity to remind delegates that the rules apply and that the process to virtual settings, as we know them, are also applicable. The process is applicable. Let me remind all of us and all the delegates about the following. Firstly, that the virtual sitting constitutes a sitting of the National Council of Provinces, that the place of the sitting is deemed to be Cape Town, where the seat of the National Council of Provinces is. To say to delegates that they, as delegates, enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Council of Provinces. That for the purpose of the quorum, all delegates who are logged in to the virtual platform shall be considered to be present, and that delegates at all times must expected to switch on their videos. That delegates should ensure that the microphones on their gadgets are muted and remain muted at all times. That we should note that the interpretation facility is active, that any delegate who wishes to speak must use the raise your hand function, and by now I'm sure all delegates are familiar with the raise your hand function or icon. Let me then move on to allow for notices of motion, and to remind delegates that the total amount of time allowed for this purpose is 20 minutes. And therefore, that any delegate wishes to give a notice of a motion should raise raise your hand function or icon as indicated. So we'll start with the notices of motion. Are there any delegates who want to table notices of motion?
Chairperson, Honorable Kluter.
Can I take it then that we should move on? That there are notices of motion and move on to a motion without notice?
Chairperson, on a point of order. On a point of
Any
order.
delegates wishes to table a motion without notice?
Chairperson, point of order. House. Chairperson,
Are there any motions?
there were
No.
members who especially.
We'll then move on, honorable members,
order.
order of the day.
You raise your hand
We'll
button.
proceed to the
We
first
have
order.
Chair.
That is the consideration of social assistance.
Our raise your hand button is not working.
And
Raise the hand.
the report of
Raise
the
your hand
subcommittee
button is
on
not
health
working.
Honorable Chair.
and social services.
What's going on with the papers?
Honorable
I now
Chair.
call on
Chairperson,
the chairperson of the select committee on health and social services to present the
Chairperson,
report.
Alone to your.
the chair be assisted, please.
Can the table assist the
On
chairperson
a
is
point
not
of order,
listening to us.
Chair.
The chairperson is not listening to us. Can
Hold the
the
hands
table
raised.
assist?
Honorable
The hands
Klute,
are raised.
Honorable Chairperson, point of order, please. It seems that you are not able to
Honorable
look at the
Klute.
raised hand function.
Can you hear us, Chair? No, you can't
Yes.
hear us because there are motions. Check the raise your hand function.
There are motions.
Chairperson, would you mind if I assist you?
if the table can please assist us.
Advocate, what is happening? What is happening?
Yeah, can we go to Honorable Klute? I see your hand is up.
Yes, that is it.
My
Honorable
function
Lucas,
is not
And
working.
yes,
Honorable
you
Lucas, are you now going to act as chair?
The chairperson did notice you, Honorable Kluter, because also I can see on my side you are the first one here. So I think you can continue, the house can continue, the chairperson is not.
But if there's a problem there, maybe we should
Next,
move on to
Chairperson, my raise your hand function is not working.
Honorable Boshoff.
On which I. Yes, please,
On
may
which
I carry
item are
on?
you speaking about? No, on which item are you, Chairperson?
Can I speak, Honorable Deputy Chair?
On which item are you speaking about, Honorable Chairperson? On which item?
Chairperson, on a point of order.
From the onset.
Chairperson, point of order. Honorable Lucas, point of order. I'm sorry, I'm mentioning you.
While the
because-
chairperson is sorting out his sound, can we continue?
Thank you.
Are we on the point of notices of motion?
Yes.
Are we on notices of motion? So
That's
if we are
correct.
on notices of motion, Honorable Kluter, do you want to put a notice of motion?
I do, please.
Continue.
Thank you.
I'm next. I also raise my hand.
Yes, we are. We take note.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Freedom Front Plus, I hereby give notice that during the next ordinary sitting of the House, I will move that, considering that some politicians have called or ordered for Shisa Lomobolu or burn these words, the fire or hatredness is evident now in what transpires in our country. Bearing in mind that anyone who wishes to kill someone or any living being by fire is inflicting the most hellish, wicked, and diabolical pain possible, and reveals the worst infernal character humanity can offer. Taking into account the vicious torching of a herd boy from the city by 10 men on Saturday night, also considering that a farmer from Koffiefontein in the Free State was also attacked and set alight by 2 attackers.
Deputy Chairperson, on a point of order, that is not a notice of motion, it's a motion
in the Western
without
Free
notice.
State, where residents torched a water tank
Deputy
out of
Chairperson,
protest.
on a point of
As
order.
a result, thousands of hectares of, if not tens of thousands, were destroyed by ongoing and ensuing runaway fires. Also noting with concern the brutal murder of Brendan Horner, a 21-year-old who was tied on a pole and executed. The death of an 81-year-old David Leslie of Harry Smith last week, after he was attacked brutally on his farm. I wish to move that this House debates the decline of the moral fiber in South Africa and how to extinguish the fire of hatred. I so move.
We take your motion, your notice of motion. I just want to request the table. If members exceed the time, please mute them. Honorable Arnolds, you will be the next.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. I rise on behalf
We are
of...
dealing with notices of motions.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Okay.
I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to propose that the Council at the next sitting debates the basic income grant as part of a permanent solution to assist the country's unemployed people. I so moved.
Thank you, Honorable Arnolds. Honorable Michaelakis.
Sorry, Chair, I neglected to put down my hand. My hand was up for motion without notice, if I can be acknowledged over there. My apologies.
Honorable Aukam.
Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Moletsane. Aukam, do you have a notice of motion?
No, I've got a motion without notice. Thank you very much.
We are busy with notices of motion. So that means we can start now. Raise your, Chairperson, are you ready?
Deputy Chairperson, you said you
Yes.
noted.
But now we are starting with motions. You want to put the motions under Mela. So we are starting now. That's why I was just asking the Chairperson whether he's taking over. If he's not taking over, can you please raise your hand on the raise your hand function, because I see your name there. You can just raise your hand.
It's not working, Deputy Chairperson.
It's fine. Okay, we are taking note. Now we are starting with motions without notice, and we will give to the Honorable Boshoff. After the Honorable Boshoff, it will be Zandamela. Honorable Boshoff.
Thank you very much, Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move a motion without notice that this council notes the... Sorry, I've got the wrong one. Notes with concern that after more than 2 years of inaction, the Democratic Alliance reiterates its call to the Council of the Tabacheru local municipality to release the forensic audit report that was conducted in 2018. Further notes that the DA in Mpumalanga has fought tirelessly in the local municipality and in the provincial legislature to ensure that this report be tabled and that those who are guilty of corruption be arrested. Also notes that up until today, the forensic audit which was conducted in Tabacheru remains hidden, and there is no one who can verify if charges were pressed against all those who were implicated. Again notes that the call by the President to act swiftly against any official who has been implicated in any alleged fraudulent activities has not been heeded by this local municipality or the provincial government of Mpumalanga. And in pursuing the fight against corruption, we call on this provincial government to ensure that this report be tabled in the council and released to the public, and those guilty of corrupt practices be brought to justice. I so move. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Chair.
The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, we will...
Objection.
There was an objection. I will speak at the end of the motions as to what is going to happen with this. Honorable Zandamela, and after you it will be Honorable Gillian.
Thanks, the Deputy Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to propose that the Council debates the ineffectiveness of provincial governments evoking of Section 139 of the Constitution to municipalities when municipalities continue to collapse and degenerate despite these interventions. I so move, Deputy Chairperson.
The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections?
Objection, Chair.
If there is an
Corrupt
objection,
people are calling for
we will
objections
move
all the
to the
time.
next. Honorable Gideon. Chairperson, are you ready to take over?
Yes,
Honorable Gillian. After Gillian spoke, you can take over. Gillian.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, allow me to rise without notice that this August House notes with pride the reported preparedness of the Independent Electoral Commission to conduct the coming local government by-elections in November 2020. That this preparedness is born out of rich experience of more than 2 decades, visionary and sterling leadership of this critical institution of our democracy. Also notes the enthusiasm displayed by the different political parties, which is marked by significant increase of parties that have registered to contest these elections as part of the consolidation of our democracy. That the increase in the number of the political parties and their successful registration in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic is a great demonstration of professional efficiency of the IEC. Therefore, calls upon this House to congratulate the IEC and all political parties that have registered for these elections for their cooperation in strengthening our constitutional democracy. Further call on all political parties to assist the IEC by conscientizing their supporters to observe the level protocols of the national state of disaster pre and during these elections as part of pushing back the resurgence of the spread of the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. I so move.
Thank you, Honorable Gillian. Is there any objection? If none, it will be Honorable Aukamp, and the chairperson will take over.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. Honorable Deputy Chair, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move a motion without notice that this Council notes the devastating fires that swept through the Western Free State on Tuesday. Further, that this House notes that more than 100,000 hectares of land was destroyed and thousands of animals had died or had to be put down by the SPCA. Further, that this House notes that communities such as Herzogsville, Deelsville, Bultfontein, and Hoopstad that were affected rely on the agricultural sector to keep the whole of the economies going. Without it, there are no jobs, no food, and no hope. That this House calls on the Minister of Agriculture to immediately intervene by supporting all those affected by the fires, by declaring it a disaster area and granting disaster relief to the affected areas. That this House resolves to urge the South African Police Service to take decisive action in bringing all persons guilty of arson to account. Furthermore, that this House welcome the non-partisan request from the Portfolio Committee in the House chaired by the Honorable Mandela to a similar effect, that is in the National Assembly. And finally, that in this time where we hear of more fires destroying farm and communal land across the country, that such assistance be extended to those affected elsewhere in our country as well. I so move. Thank you.
Okamba, you there?
I am here, Honorable Chairperson. Did you hear my motion?
Yeah. Now I'll ask the Deputy Chair to please carry on.
Thank you,
We seem to be
Chairperson.
having problems.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, we will give now to Honorable Bartlett to read, to table a motion.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable House Chairperson, on behalf of the African National Congress, allow me to rise up on behalf of the African National Congress that this House notes with pride the reported news of the arrest of the suspect in the killing of one of South Africa's soccer icon, the late Senzo Mayiwa, who was killed in cold blood a few years ago. This arrest and other high-profile arrests of suspects in the violent crimes in one of the watershed breakthroughs that demonstrate the resilience and capacity of our criminal justice system to erode the space for violent crimes in our society. I therefore, Chair, call upon this House to congratulate the men and women in blue and the Minister of Police, in particular for fulfilling their promise to the country that they will never rest until the suspects in this killing are brought to book. I so move on behalf of the African National Congress. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Bartlett. The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, we are moving forward and we will now call on Honorable Sheikh to table the motion, the next motion without notice.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the African National Congress that this August House notes the recent developments of arrest by the National Prosecuting Authority of high-profile suspects in the alleged acts of corruption, fraud, and money laundering. Further notes the pronouncements by the Hawks of imminent arrests of other suspects in what has become commonly known as the biggest bank heist of the former VBS Mutual Bank and other high-profile arrests related to corruption, that these arrests should be seen as part of the collective resolve of the country to fight corruption without fear or favor, and therefore call on our people to be patient with the slow turning of the wheels of justice to allow our law enforcement agencies to work with due diligence, not only for arresting the suspects, but also securing their convictions and their graduation into the orange overalls. And further salute our law enforcement agencies for their sterling work in bringing to book those who have sought to benefit from the public purse through corruption and fraudulent means. I so move. Thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Sheikh. The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, let's then give. Is there an objection? If none, let's move to the Honorable Moletsane. Honorable Moletsane.
No, thank you, Deputy Chairman. Was a motion with notice.
Okay, then you will notice of the motion. You will do it in the next sitting. Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the Council knows that the Moshesh Agriculture High School scholar transport operator was suspended shortly after a video of him drinking while a people was driving the bus went viral on social media. Further note that in the video, the operator can be seen dancing and sipping from the bottle while the people is driving the bus. Also note that the lives of all the learners who were traveling in the bus were put in danger, and this cannot be allowed to happen again. Therefore, call on the Eastern Cape Government of Education to make sure that the transport operator is punished accordingly, and that this kind of the incident never happen again. I so moved.
The motion is in front of the House. Thank you, Honorable Ndongeni. The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, we will move to the next person. That is Honorable Ngwenya, House Chair. Honorable Ngwenya.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Deputy Chair, I move motion without notice. Note with profound sadness and grief the passing of Salman Dango, Ahmed Dango, and Isham Dango, who were the brothers of the provisional whip of the Gauteng province, Honorable Mr. Dango, and the Deputy Secretary General of the African National Congress, Comrade Jesse Duarte. Further notice that the Dango brothers passed away in a space of just over a month due to COVID-19 related to complications. Acknowledges the undeniable role played by the Dangos brothers in the fight against apartheid and for remaining amongst the founding pillar of various nation efforts to build South Africa after the 1994 democratic election. Salimani Dango was a community activist who played a pivotal role in the fighting against crime. Ahmed Dango formed Black Thought along with another writers to oppose the enslavement of the Bantu education system. He served in many non-government organizations, including the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Some of the books he authored and published over the years, including Waiting for Leah, Private Voices, and Time Trilogy, among many others. Isham Dango was a political activist who joined the rank of Umkhonto Wesizwe Ngokufingqiwe MK and returned for exile in 1990 after the unbanning of the ANC and immediately joined the ANC Riverry branch in Johannesburg region, assisting in strengthening and building ANC structures through Gauteng. Take this opportunity to convene its heartfelt condolences to Honorable Dango and the entire Dango family for their incredible loss and express in profound appreciation for sharing their entire family with South Africa and allow the space to dedicate their time to serve South Africa. I so move.
The motion is in front of the House. Is there any objections? If none, we will give to the Honorable Mutsamai. Honorable Mutsamai.
Thanks, Chairperson. On behalf of economic emancipation freedom fighters, there are more than 10,000 students in institutions of higher learning that are currently cut by NSR. I pass a motion to discuss the plan of the Ministry of Higher Learning to assist those poor students. I so move.
I think that is a notice of motion. We will deal with it in that way. Honorable Mahlangu, you will be the last one.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chair. I hereby move without notice on behalf of the ANC that the Council notes with profound sadness and grief the passing away of Mr. Mzwandile Webster Nyambi, who was the sixth child of the late Mr. Joseph Nyambi and Ms. Trifina Nyambi, and the brother of our House Chairperson, Honorable A.J. Nyambi. Further note that Mr. Mzwandile Nyambi was an accomplished and extremely decorated police officer who served the South African Police Service with utmost dedication for 20 years. He excelled in the field of crime prevention and communication as a constable and moved on to serve as a sergeant, lieutenant captain, and ultimately lieutenant colonel, and received numerous provincial and national awards for his commitment and tireless service to the South African Police Services. And as the ANC takes this opportunity to convey our heartfelt condolences to Honorable Nyambi and the Nyambi family and the police service for their loss. I so move, Honorable Deputy Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Maslango. Is there any objection to the motion? I take it there is none. For the motions that have been objected against, they will become notices of motion. And I will also advise the Honorable Mutsamai to at the next sitting put his motion as a notice of motion. Since we are moving to the next step, since we have concluded with the motions, and if the chairperson is not ready yet, we will continue.
Chairperson, my hand was up for the motions without notice.
Your hand was never up and you didn't indicate, so the time is expired because there is only 20 minutes. There is only 20 minutes for motions, both notices of motions and motions without notice. The time has expired, so we are going to move to the next point on the agenda, and that will be honorable delegates. We will now proceed to the first order of the day. That is the consideration of the Social Assistance Amendment Bill and the report of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services thereon. I now call on the Honorable Morencha Gillian, Chairperson of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services, to present the committee's report. Honorable Gillian.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, honorable members, fellow South Africans. As we are gathered here today through a virtual platform in a time of unprecedented adversity in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, I stand firm thanks to our Constitution that sets out minimum standards pertaining to socio-economic rights, including social security, social assistance, and social services. Section 28(1) of the Constitution provides that every child has the right to family care or parental care, or to appreciate alternative care when removed from the family environment, and to basic nutrition, shelter, basic healthcare services, and social services. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, it is then indeed an honor to stand in front of this August House today and present the Social Assistance Amendment Bill, B8 of 2018, Section 76, as finalized by the Select Committee on Health and Social Services on the 14th of October 2020. Honorable members, the goal of the foster care system is to provide for the care, health, safety, and well-being of children and adolescents while fostering reunification or an alternative permanent arrangement. However, as times evolve, it has been facing administrative and legislative challenges, which this legislation aims to address. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, this is an important piece of legislation as it amends the Social Assistance Bill number 13 of 2004 by empowering the Minister of Social Development with concurrence of the Minister of Finance to make additional amounts available for social grants. Thus, through this amendment bill, there will be provision for additional payments linked to social grants. Further, there are provisions for the payment of benefits to a child responsible for a child-headed household, social relief of distress in the event of a disaster, streamlining and improving the process of appeals against decisions of the South African Social Security Agency by providing for an independent tribunal. The Select Committee on Health and Social Services considered and deliberated on the negotiating mandates from provinces on the 7th of October 2020, following public participation on the amendment bill. The extent of legislative process undertaken has led to the finalization of this amendment bill with no amendments, as all 9 provinces voted in its favor. It is then on this backdrop, Deputy Chair, that we have the report table in front of you. The social services sector needs this bill to be ascended as a big step towards addressing challenges in the foster care system. I thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Honorable Gillian. I now put a question, and the question is that the bill will be adopted. But before we proceed to voting, I shall allow provinces the opportunity to make their declarations of vote in terms of Rule 71, if they so wish. Provinces, you are allowed to make your declarations. Honorable Labaskagni.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Chairperson, can you please mute? Honorable Labaskagni, you may continue.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The foster care crisis came to our attention in 2011 when for the first time the Minister and Department of Social Development was taken to court by the Centre for Child Law on behalf of no less than 120,000 foster child grants that had lapsed and stopped being paid, and a further 300,000 that were at risk of lapsing. Since then, the North Gauteng High Court, for the sake of children who are in the foster care system, has had to keep ordering that the children's expired foster care court orders must be deemed to have been extended and their grants must be continued to be paid. At the center of all this has been the requirement for the Minister and the Department of Social Development to develop a comprehensive legal solution to deal with the foster care crisis. That comprehensive legal solution has not been forthcoming in almost 10 years, and as a result, the Northern Gauteng High Court has had to extend the 2011 court order 3 times in 2014, 2017, and 2019, respectively. We hope the Social Assistance Amendment Bill, which we support, will bring about some relief to the system and ensure that children who deserve this grant receive it and free the social workers and magistrates who have been bogged down by the backlogs to do the equally important and protective work in the child protection system. The bill empowers the Minister to provide a top-up to child support grant for categories of children in need. This will enable a top-up for relatives caring for orphan children. This is the first part of the comprehensive legal solution. Once the bill is passed by the NCOP, we call on the department to act efficiently to finalize the regulations to enable the top-up to be in place before the North Gauteng High Court order expires. Otherwise, a 4th extension of this High Court order is going to be required. We also hope that the unfortunate legacy of the department having to be run by courts can be broken once and for all. Our social workers are a scarce resource which should be used strategically. We have now no less than 4,000 of these social workers who were trained by government and are sitting at home while the sectors need them so desperately. We again call on all departments to absorb these social workers in fighting COVID-19 and beyond. We hope that the Minister and the new Acting Director-General will make decisions that are in the best interest of all the children in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Labaskagni. Honorable Maleka Mpumalanga.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. The ANC rises in support of the Social Assistance Amendment Bill. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the ANC wants to make the opportunity to congratulate Minister Lindiwe Zulu on her appointment as the Chairperson of the Partners in Population Development. The PPD has a sole mandate on promoting South cooperation in the field of reproductive health, population, and development. We are delighted that the provinces, through their final mandate, support the bill. Honorable members, the bill firstly deals with the rolling out of the inspectorate, which will function faster, timelessly, focus in investigation and manage incidents of fraud in SASSA. Secondly, it provides a top-up for children looked after by their family members and reduce the burden on the foster care grant system as well as the adoption system. It is the first comprehensive legal solution that addresses the backlog on the foster care grant system. The substantive amendment relates to, firstly, the Minister of Social Development, with the concurrence of the Minister of Finance, make available additional payment for social grants based on certain criteria. It removes the reconsideration requirement from SASSA so that grant applicants can do directly to the appeals tribunal, as it shortens the process. Thirdly, changes the inspectorate organizational structure from being a government department to a component. In part, the proposed amendment aims to reduce the burden on social workers. It will enable them to perform the essential work of identifying children who are in need of support and care and putting them through the court system. Through the new legislation, the department has to inform all stakeholders that they could appeal directly through them and not have to go through SASSA. This means that the department is expected to regularly and effectively communicate to stakeholders in order to close any gaps that may exist and ensure that people are aware of the appeals process and the changes that will come with the amendment bill. We support the amendment that seeks to ensure that the inspectorate functions independently. Honorable members, this amendment will ensure that the social assistance system caters the kinship care, will create security for children that are raised by their own extended families. It will enable the country to advance the best interest of the child or children, which is paramount importance as enjoined by Section 28 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The ANC support the Social Assistance Amendment Bill.
Thank you, Honorable Maleka. I take it you are from Mpumalanga. Honorable Swartboy from KwaZulu-Natal.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, as KwaZulu-Natal, we are excited to support the Social Assistance Amendment Bill, B8B 2018, as it seeks, one, to empower the Minister responsible for social development with concurrence with the Minister of Finance to make additional amounts available to grants. Two, to streamline and improve the process of internal appeals against the decisions of South African Social Security Agency to be made to the independent tribunal. And three, to constitute the internal inspectorate for social assistance as a government component instead of a government department as currently provided for in the Principal Act. Having received the minutes of the Select Committee and responses from the department, KwaZulu-Natal Legislature noted that some of our comments were noted, and there was an undertaking that there will be future technical amendments to the Act or regulations formulated to accommodate the committee's proposals. As a committee, we could not ignore the fact that some of the proposals submitted were not addressed, and some issues raised by the province were policy related. For example, introduction of the grant of widows. Honorable Chairperson, we are mindful of a court judgment that compels Parliament to pass the amendment bill to give effect to the CSG policy. KwaZulu-Natal legislature has no option but to support the bill in its current form, with the understanding that there will be a further reform of social assistance regime, which will address some of the issues raised by the committee in its negotiating mandate. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swartboy. We will now continue to proceed to the voting on the question. And the question is that the bill be adopted, and we will call upon provinces to cast their votes. We call upon heads of delegations. They must indicate whether they vote in favor, against, or abstain. And we will start with the Eastern Cape.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Eastern Cape votes in favor of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Free State.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Chairperson. Free State is in support of the bill.
Thank you very much, Gauteng.
Gauteng votes in favor of the bill, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dangor. KwaZulu-Natal. KZN.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. KwaZulu-Natal supports this progressive bill, amendment bill.
Thank you. Although you said it before, we are just doing it formally and officially. Limpopo.
Thank you, Comrade. Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Limpopo support the bill.
Thank you very much. Mpumalanga, Marihane. Mpumalanga.
Mpumalanga support the bill.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malika. Northern Cape.
Northern Cape supportable, Honorable Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Northwest.
Yep, Chair, on stand, Sam.
Dankie, Landsman. Western Cape.
The Western Cape supports the bill.
Thank you very much. The voting is now closed. All the provinces have voted in favor of the bill. So I therefore declare the bill adopted in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. Honorable delegates, we will now proceed to tribute to healthcare workers for their role on the front line of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And I now call upon the Honorable Amos Raambi Masondo, the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, to open the tributes. Honorable N.A. Masondo, chairperson of the NCOP.
Yes, thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson and Program Director. Honorable Deputy Minister of Health, Mr. Dr. Joe Pasha, Honorable Permanent and Special Delegates, representatives of the South African Local Government Association, SALGA, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining me today to pay tribute to health workers in general, but to our NCOP healthcare workers in particular. In any disaster, Program Director, whether caused by humans, nature, or both, one often finds a group of people who occupy the front lines. At the heart of all frontline workers are doctors, nurses, paramedics, and other health workers who selflessly serve their communities and more often with little access to resources and frequently at great personal risk. They are usually the first port of call for any emergencies. They roll up their sleeves and line up to the face of disaster to save lives, to save limbs and property. They become our eyes and ears when many of us have retreated to places of relative safety. They work under the worst and difficult conditions, staring danger and death in the eye. Like in the case of firefighters trying to quell raging fires. Their proximity to danger is the best guarantor that lives will be saved. In this process, Their families experience anxiety as their kith and kin risk their lives to save the lives of fellow human beings. In our institution, frontline healthcare workers have provided quality healthcare to all of us under demanding conditions of the outbreak of COVID-19. Program Director, when the outbreak of the coronavirus was first identified at the end of 2019 and declared a public health emergency of international concern in January 2020, and thereafter a pandemic in March this year by the World Health Organization. Little did we expect that it would wreak such havoc globally. We witnessed its spread within weeks to every habitable continent in the globe. The numbers of people who have perished ever since the outbreak have now surpassed 1 million globally, with close to 19,000 confirmed deaths in our country. Among the dead are the healthcare workers who occupied the battle trenches in an act of philanthropism dedicated to saving lives. It is through their commitment and the contribution of these healthcare workers that President Cyril Ramaphosa was able to observe that as a country, quote, we were able to withstand the massive surge of infections in the middle of July, close quote. He said this when he addressed the joint sitting of Parliament on the 15th of October in 2020. Program Director, it is therefore fitting that the National Council of Provinces has decided to dedicate time to pay tribute to all the healthcare workers for their role in the front line of the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The rapid spread of the virus occurred at a time when we had less knowledge about it and its spread. And all we had were thousands of healthcare workers who were prepared to charge into the epicenter of the storm in the midst of the unimaginable risks. They used whatever evidence was available from medical science to serve as their shield. Even when more evidence emerged regarding the spread of the virus through airborne transmission in certain circumstances, they did not flinch. They continued to attend to the sick and to impart lessons about the precautionary measures to ward off the danger. They did all this in order to save the lives of fellow human beings. All that stood between the health workers and the virus in the highly contagious environment they operated in were pieces of protective equipment. Yet they stood guard and gave us the assurance that the human spirit will triumph against all the odds. In spite of lack of resources and similar challenges, they kept on keeping on. Program Director, if there is one lesson we should learn from the sacrifices made by our healthcare workers, it is that as humans, we possess amazing capacities to do good. And that, although we may not always truly appreciate it, we are indeed wired to love. As the founding president of the Democratic South Africa, President Nelson Mandela observed in his book, Long Walk to Freedom, quote, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his or her skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite, close quote. The fight against COVID-19 pandemic has shown us through the sacrifices of our healthcare workers that the front line can be a place for the expression of love. It can be a place for the expression of that which, quote, comes more naturally to the human heart, close quote. But Program Director, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed what we have come to refer to as, quote unquote, fault lines of inequality in South Africa. It has demonstrated the need to act with great speed to protect the most vulnerable in our society. It has confirmed the correctness of our belief that we should place the resources of the country where they are needed the most. Our promise of freedom knows no color or birth status. It is for all South Africans. The COVID-19 experience should therefore serve as a catalyst for the fostering of nation building and social cohesion. As the healthcare workers have shown us, we are indeed bound by our human compassion towards one another. We should therefore work together to achieve social cohesion and accelerate the project of nation building in order to experience a just and inclusive society. Ours is a nation that prides itself on embracing the virtues and philosophy of Ubuntu, Butu. The practice of Ubuntu, Butu, has seen us through times of great suffering and anguish. At the heart of the philosophy of Ubuntu, Butu, is the acceptance that, quote, we achieve ourselves by sharing ourselves with others and caring for those around us, close quote. We salute our healthcare workers who continue to be on the front line of fighting the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. We salute them for continuing to provide essential health services at great risk to their own health and to their lives. We honor those who have succumbed in the course of the fight. In their memory, we should commit to doing that which is good, whatever the odds. As I conclude, Program Director, please allow me to say our hearts are with all the health workers and their families. We dare not forget what we have done and continue to do for your country at a time when your country needed you the most. May you continue to do the extraordinary things you committed yourselves to for the love of the people, for the love of this country, and indeed for the love of humanity. Thank you very much.
Before I call on Honorable Pasha, I just want to request the chairperson to take over the program after the Honorable Pasha has spoken, and also to note that number 4 will no longer participate in the tribute debate. Honorable Pasha.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the Honorable Deputy Chair of the NCOP, Honorable Sylvia Lucas, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Amos Masondo, all the members, including MECs from provinces, delegates, and also the special delegates, good afternoon. We thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Deputy Chair, for the invitation to the Ministry of Health to take part in this very important debate in the NCOP. Let me start by also saying that I'm participating in this debate not only on my own behalf, but also on behalf of my colleague and comrade, Minister of Health, Minister Zweli Mkhize, and the Department of Health, and also on behalf of various players in the health sector. It is also very befitting, Honorable Chairperson, for me to take this opportunity to wish Minister Mkhize and his wife, Dr. May Mkhize, speedy recovery, so that the minister can come back and continue with a very important task that he has been doing since the outbreak of this pandemic, also on our shores, with the first case being confirmed on the 5th of March this year. As members of the House will attest, and as many in the country will also confirm, that Minister Mkhize has indeed been leading the fight against this invisible enemy, leading from the front. I have kept a close contact with him since he called me to inform me of his positive test late on Sunday, this last Sunday. I can report that both himself and his wife, Dr. May, are in good spirits and they are doing very well. And we hope that they should be out of danger. In fact, they are out of danger, but they are recovering. So we hope that they will be able to come back to work very, very soon. Honorable members, pandemics do not spare those who care for the sick. By their very nature, pandemics put us at great risk of exposure of these infectious diseases. Healthcare workers are in proximity to those infected and spend a lot of time with them compared with the general public. In this COVID-19 pandemic, protecting the health worker is central to protecting our health system. All health frontline workers must be protected from the transmission. This in turn will be a good protection to the public. Healthcare workers and emergency response workers are the most at risk. Hundreds have already fallen ill to this pandemic, some of them very critically, and some have even lost their lives. By the 21st of October, which is yesterday, there were more than 708,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 out of over 4.5 million tests which have been conducted. These numbers give just a glimpse of the additional workload that was placed on our frontline health workers. The total number of deaths have passed 18,000, almost 18,500, with a case fatality rate of 2.6%, which is very close to other countries like the US and Brazil, and much lower than countries like the United Kingdom. This is testimony to the care and commitment of our frontline health workers who provided their best to save lives and also to serve the population. Healthcare workers are at the front line in this fight, putting themselves in tremendous pressure to perform at their best in efforts to prevent unnecessary fatalities. Amidst the stressful conditions they work under, health workers need to ensure that their skills are always sharp, that they remain focused on the patient, and they are alert and focused while providing this caring service. Medical staff for COVID-19 patients also face mental stress, physical exhaustion, separation from families, stigma, and pain of losing patients, and also looking sometimes at colleagues also get infected. Many of them, as I've mentioned, have also contracted the virus, and many, unfortunately, have also succumbed to this virus. In South Africa, more than 44,000 healthcare workers in the public and private sectors combined have been infected with COVID-19 by the middle of this month, October. This includes clinical as well as support staff. Regrettably, 380 of these health workers have succumbed to this infection, and may their souls rest in peace. Honorable Chairperson and members, please also allow me this opportunity to wish all the health workers who have contracted the COVID-19 a speedy recovery, and also wish their families from whom they have been separated, wish the families strength and courage. Let us reiterate that COVID-19 pandemic puts health workers in a very difficult situation. There's a risk not only to themselves, but also of bringing this infection to their families when they go home. Keeping the balance between their own physical and mental health needs keeping balance between their needs of physical and mental health and the needs of patients put a lot of stress to them on a daily basis. Furthermore, in some cases, they also have put under pressure when resources are scarce, and they have to decide as to what, in the scarce resources, who must they afford this and not afford the other one. And these are very difficult decisions. Fortunately, in our country, our health services were never completely overwhelmed. And I know that some opportunists from time to time also want to blame us for having over-provided, for the fact that we provided additional facilities, some of which were never 100% utilized. But we know that if we had not provided so, if the pandemic had been at a harsher way, again, we would have been criticized. So we are happy that we over-provided, and we never reached a serious stage where our health workers had to choose who to care for and who to can admit. There were always beds in hospitals, both public and private. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease and infirmity. Therefore, in order to take care of the health workers as a complete human being, a package of care, including physical and psychological and social support, was provided as a package. The strategy for taking care of health workers was officially launched by Minister Mkhize on the World Patient Day on the 17th of September this year. This strategy aims to protect the physical and mental health of our frontline workers by providing a package of care for all of them, encompassing physical, psychological, and social support. The objectives of the strategy are to protect the physical health of health workers through prevention and mitigation of COVID-19 infections by providing a safe physical environment, promote mental health of the health workers through psychological support and social support, educate and train health workers to manage COVID-19 cases and implement occupational health and safety protocols, maintain, establish ongoing communication with all health workers. These are the key infection prevention control aspects to the implementation of this protection of health workers. This include patient placement, sufficient ventilation in facilities, hand hygiene, environmental cleaning, wearing appropriate personal protection clothing according to the task performed. Functional occupational health and safety committees play a very critical role to monitor the safety of health workers through medical surveillance, risk assessment of health workers, and workplace risk mitigation. Our vulnerable employees in the context of COVID-19 pandemic were identified and assessed according to guidelines, which also call for optimal medical management. The protection and management include also a reduction of the risk of exposure and temporary alternative work and arrangements or redeployment. Honorable members, so these are some of the measures which were taken collectively between the ministry and department together with the trade unions and the worker representatives. So we are very pleased that indeed with all these interventions, a lot of our health workers' lives have been saved. And at this stage, we can say that while we regret the fact that we did indeed lose some of our health workers, many of whom are still with us and they're still providing excellent service. And in the case we have a resurgence, we can say that our population will still indeed be very much protected. Now we have shared a lot of lessons in the process, from national to provinces, learning from each other. So as I conclude, Honorable Chair, I want to salute all our frontline workers who continue to serve and provide safe health care to patients in prevention of COVID-19 and many other disease burden, which is still bedeviling our population. Let us keep our health workers in our thoughts and prayers all the time. But lastly, let's remind all South Africans that the virus is still with us, it's not gone. Let's continue to observe all the prevention protocols so that we can be able to save lives and save livelihoods. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Deputy Minister. The next speaker is Honorable M.R. Bacher. Honorable Bacher.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, Deputy Minister, honorable members. I think that it's important to note that coronavirus has caused a lot of despair among South Africans and the world at large. Some have lost their lives. Amongst those who've lost their lives are healthcare workers who cared for the sick. These heroes and heroines lost their lives whilst in the line of duty. They provided support and comfort to those in hospital isolated from their families. The pressure under which they carry on their duties is highly commendable. They leave their homes, families, and loved ones to give care and support for others every day in clinics, hospitals, and other health institutions without fail. These include medical care, administrative support, and other services like cleaning and catering. These are the individuals who are risking their lives so ours can be better. We must honor and uphold them, for they have put their lives on the line for us to live. That is why it is important for them to get the protective equipment and all they need to continue doing the good work that they are doing. We have successfully exited the storm, and that is because of the countless efforts of those who put their lives on the line for the survival of others. They therefore need our support and maximum understanding as they stand up to help us. As some contract the virus, we are with them and their families. We, however, are aware of those who saw this as an opportunity to make money for themselves, whilst others were putting their lives on the line to save South Africa from a catastrophic situation. We want to implore the government to take this up as a matter of urgency, to deal with those who saw this as an opportunity to enrich themselves. We must commend provincial governments who have gone out of their way to provide support to staff members in the health department to ensure that they are ready to provide services to those who need it. It is important that we must take note of the uptick of new infections. There is a new rise and re-emergence of the coronavirus. We therefore need to work closely with healthcare workers to defeat this pandemic. We currently stand at as 90% recovery rate, which is quite phenomenal. This is all due to the hard work of our healthcare workers who are with us all the way. We must continue to use all protective equipment that is provided to us. Numbers have significantly dropped compared to what they were 3 months ago. And therefore, that should serve as a motivation in assisting those who put their lives on the line for us to survive the deadly coronavirus. The battle is not won yet. There are still fears that we might be back to where we were during the first outbreak of the coronavirus. However, we stand to salute the impersonal contributions of those who put their lives on the line for the good of others. Just to say that Minister Mkhize stated that the country has seen 10% increase of cases over the last 14 days. Whilst this is far from the 20% increase, it is important to remain assured of each province's readiness to deal with a spike in cases. It is quite refreshing that we have such good South Africans amongst us, individuals who put the interest of the well-being of others, even if it means that their own lives are at risk. We are fortunate to have such people amongst us. That is mainly to serve and be there for the good of others. May all the health workers, the Minister of Health, Dr. Mkhize, and his wife, pull through and continue to fight against this deadly virus. We need to work hard to safeguard the health of our frontline workers. God bless South Africa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Barker.
What a great speech.
Big speech.
The next person is Honorable M.O. Mukause. Honorable Mukause.
Chairperson, thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, the beginning of 2020 saw a war being waged on South Africa and the world at large that we could never have been prepared for. When the battle lines were drawn and the enemy was ready to attack, our battalion in surgical masks, scraps, uniform, white or maroon epaulets took to the front line with fearful yet brave hearts to confront an adversary many knew very little about. Chairperson, the novel coronavirus came like a thief in the night, sounding no alarm bells, wreaking havoc in its wake and leaving many heartbroken, physically exhausted, reeling from its effort. House Chairperson, it is the brave men and women who put their lives on the line for the whole nation confronting this virus head on every single day, whom we want to honor and pay tribute to as an organization, the Economic Freedom Fighters. Chairperson, to healthcare workers in South Africa, we have observed for many years, even before the onset of the coronavirus, how you have been subjected to precarious working conditions, and yet you soldiered on fearlessly. We acknowledge miracles you have had to perform, saving lives with no medical equipment, treating patients with a shortage of medicines, and keeping babies alive in neonatal ICUs amidst power outages. Chairperson, we are humbled as the EFF, despite a lot of uncertainty you put your lives on as healthcare workers and frontline workers at the risk to treat South Africans who were infected with coronavirus whilst facing shortages of ventilators and life-saving PPEs, irrespective of the monies poured into the fund, and those corrupt make use of the money for themselves and their families. When hospitals were overcrowded at the height of coronavirus, these frontline healthcare workers were there fighting the virus fearlessly. Chairperson, when healthcare facilities were short-staffed because your colleagues were homesick, infected with the virus, these healthcare workers were there. They never complained. They never stayed home. Chair, when the healthcare system was on the brink of collapse, these healthcare workers were there, working 48-hour shift while fighting physical, mental, and emotional fatigue. We, as ordinary South Africans, could never fully grasp the true extent to which coronavirus has affected your families as well as your psychological well-being. Ours is to thank you and honor you and say, rest assured, you are on the right side of history. You shall never be forgotten. You fought tirelessly to educate, flatten the curve, and save the lives of thousands of ordinary South Africans, some who could not even afford health care, whilst others saw an opportunity to line their pockets and flatten their bank accounts. Chairperson, please accept our condolences for those who lost their lives and those colleagues who lost their lives, who fought bravely through the COVID-19 pandemic. May you continue to serve the nation with pride, humility, and dignity. The economic freedom fighters salute you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mpaela.
Honorable Chairperson Nyambose, the IFP would like to pay special tribute to the healthcare workers that have remained at the forefront of our national response to the novel coronavirus. It takes a certain level of courage, skills, grit, and compassion to put their life on the line every single day in an effort to heal our nation. Despite facing mental stress, physical exhaustion, and separation from their own families, they are still committed to getting up every morning to selflessly serve our country and its people. There is no better time than now for South Africa to nurture its spirit of Ubuntu, to lead with virtues of compassion, selflessness, and humanity. And our healthcare workers have done exactly that. They have led by example and demonstrated what it means to selflessly serve our country and our people. Their efforts do not go unnoticed, and we as IFP Chairperson, we thank them and support them in every way. In the same token, Mr. Chairperson, the issue of COVID-19 corruption is a shame and not reflective of the kind of leadership that South Africa deserves. South Africa needs leadership that comes from a place of selflessness, a place of compassion, a place of regard for one another, and subsequently a place of Ubuntu. Leadership which has been demonstrated by our healthcare workers. Going forward, Chairperson, the IFP hopes to see this kind of leadership take form in our country. I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable S.F. Detroit.
Honorable Chair, as communicated, Honorable Klute will be taking part in this discussion.
Okay. Honorable Klute.
Thank you, Chairperson. You know, as is the case with many days where we celebrate or pay tribute to those we hold dear, a debate such as this will mean nothing if we do not do it every day. It's sad that it took COVID-19 to make us really realize the importance of healthcare workers every day. But thank you to every healthcare worker for being in the front line, because without you, any minister's plan to curb the spread would have been worth nothing. To those who, amidst poor conditions at hospitals, thank you that you arrived at work. Thank you for pitching up and doing your job. Thank you to those who tried to be creative, to look for solutions to problems such as a lack of beds and blankets and oxygen and medicine, even though government did not attend to your pleas in the past. Thank you to those who kept on going despite the fact that, that certain people with more political power than you wish to enrich themselves. Thank you to each and every doctor and nurse who faced the virus in the very front lines, sometimes with very little assistance, while the department have underspent 21.7 million on salaries and personnel this year. Thank you to those doctors who have lost an income owing to lockdown regulations, but for staying true to the Hippocratic oaths and volunteered to help where possible at any rate. Thank you for those for treating not only patients, not only infections, not only symptoms, but for treating us as human beings. Our prayers are also with those families of healthcare workers who have lost loved ones in this pandemic. Voorsitter, ons sê dankie, want 'n mens steek nie 'n lamp op en sit dit onder 'n emmer nie, maar op 'n lampstander en dit gee lig vir almal in die huis. Julle is die lig vir die wêreld. Dankie, voorsitter.
Thank you. The next speaker is Honorable M. Gillian.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Deputy Minister, honorable members, fellow South Africans. It is often said that modern-day heroes and heroines do not wear capes. And indeed, the novel coronavirus pandemic that plagued the globe this year was a display to all of us on the veracity of the statement. While nations were grappling with the daily increases in positive cases and subsequent deaths brought about by this pandemic, which led to most countries undertaking in a lockdown, it was indeed our frontline healthcare workers who braved it out on the battlefield in an effort to fight this pandemic. It is no secret, Chairperson, that the health workers have been at the forefront of fighting this pandemic, working long hours to provide care and support to the infected, in addition to the usual expected healthcare services. It is thanks to their selfless dedication that 641,706 people have recovered fully from COVID-19 to date. Our healthcare workers willingly continue to risk their own health and those of their families so that the lives of millions of South Africans might be spared. As the African National Congress, we wish to take this opportunity to show our sincerest appreciation and gratitude to these modern-day heroes and heroines, and encourage them to continue waging a relentless war against this pandemic. We also remember and commemorate the lives of all our frontline healthcare workers who sadly passed on from this virus. May your patriotic souls rest in eternal peace. The outbreak of the coronavirus in our country, Chairperson, has proven beyond reasonable doubt that our healthcare system, especially in the rural areas and townships, needs the services of these workers, as they were at the forefront of mass screening and testing, treating, and many other programs that took place since the outbreak of COVID-19 in this country. In echoing the sentiments of Minister Willem Kiese yesterday, whom we are wishing alongside his wife a steadfast recovery, and I quote, "In a war, when an injured soldier lies down to recover, injuries do not remove his mindset from the set goal to win the battle. He uses such an opportunity to reflect on the battle and also to think ahead for when he rejoins the army." Close quote. Like soldiers in this pandemic, the nation finds itself in that position where we are left with no choice but to continue to fight the battle against COVID-19. It is worth stating, Chairperson, that when government emphasized the risk of the resurgence remained high, they did not do so to instill fear. As government, they have a responsibility to alert us when they see concerning trends. South Africans will recall that a few months ago, when we witnessed these trends, it wasn't long before we started experiencing a burden in our health system. We have a responsibility as deployees to ensure that important messages by government reaches our constituencies. The Minister of Health informed us yesterday that the reports are showing that in the country over the last 7 days, there has been an increase of 9.1% in new cases. Summarily, over the last 14 days, there has been an increase of 10.7%. We wish to encourage all provinces to pay attention to these increasing numbers and quickly mount a response, including contact tracing and quarantine. A study was conducted by the UNDP, published in August this year, Chairperson, found that at the household level, female-headed households were more likely to fall into poverty than male-headed households during this pandemic. Despite government's efforts and interventions, which must be commendable, the stimulus package, as we have seen to be rolled out in recent months, would not be sufficient, given that households were still going to lose at least 40% of their income, even if they qualify for the special temporary employer relief scheme and other programs that government put in place to cushion the poor and most vulnerable during this pandemic. It is for this reason that the ANC wishes to express its support for the President's recently announced Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. We are confident that this plan will usher the extraordinary measures it must take to restore our economy to inclusive growth following the devastation caused by COVID-19 to our people's lives and our country's economy. In conclusion, Chairperson, I wish to echo the sentiments of the Health Minister as we continue to monitor the development of a vaccine and the country's economic reconstruction and recovery plan. The only weapon we possess as a country is our social behavior and constant adherence to health protocols. This entails the continuous practice of physical distance, wearing of masks when in public, and washing our hands and or the use of sanitizers on a regular basis. all of us must take the responsibility and always encourage those around us to follow suit. It is the collective responsibility of us all that will result in a victory against this pandemic. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes, Morenji. Goed zo.
Honorable delegates, through our own individual observation, we know that at times great efforts are not acknowledged during one's lifetime. Today we gather to salute a patriot and to acknowledge great work done. We will now proceed to a farewell statement and tribute to the Auditor-General, Mr. T.K. Makwetu, for his tireless service to South Africa. I now call upon Honorable S.E. Lucas, the Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, to start with our farewell statements and tribute.
Yes, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, House Chairpersons, Chief Whip of the NCOP, Honorable Members, Permanent and Special Delegates, Auditor-General, Mr. Makwetu. It is indeed an honor, and I want to express my gratitude to the NCOP and the Chairperson for this opportunity to be part of those that pay tribute to someone that I've been working for the past 7 years, ever since its inception as an Auditor-General. And I want to start by quoting the following. Each epoch in history needs its own leaders, as well as its own institutions to promote appropriate cultural shifts to meet new demands, close quote. Accountability is the very essence of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. In this regard, the Auditor-General of South Africa, as the supreme audit institution of the Republic, plays a very important oversight role of promoting financial accountability in government. While the introduction of the Auditor-General Act of 1989, and more particularly the amendment of that Act in 1992, increased the Auditor-General's level of authority as well as independence. It was really the impact of the new public management school of thinking across the public sector world, which both directly and indirectly led to the wide-reaching reforms undertaken by many supreme audit institutions over the years. To this end, the Office of the Auditor-General in South Africa has become a leading proponent of these reforms. Thereafter, the modernization and the reforms began in earnest through the Public Finance Management Act of 1999 and the Municipal Finance Management Act of 2003. These acts, through a number of significant provisions, gave birth to a revolution within the South African public sector. And as a direct consequence within the Office of the Auditor-General, the positive impact is still being felt up until today. Amartya Sen argues, the rulers of a nation are often insulated in their own lives from the misery faced by the common people. They can live through a national calamity without necessarily sharing the fate of the victims. If, however, they face public criticism, they might have a strong sense of insensitivity to take action or deal with the problems of the poor and the vulnerable. In 2016, through your efforts, Mr. Auditor-General, and passion for the people of our country, you managed to persuade the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General in Parliament to review the powers of the Auditor-General and the suitability thereof to adequately address systemic failures in public sector financial and performance management systems. The sole purpose of that legislation is to restore the administrative integrity of financial and performance management systems which are aimed at service delivery and the achievement of government strategic goals. Through your leadership in office, Mr. Makwetu, you understood that Chapter 9 institutions are supported to keep the executive under constant scrutiny and perfect ordinary citizens and protect ordinary citizens from arbitrary action and state neglect. Allow me and allow us as the NCOP to congratulate you and your supportive collective on enhancing your office's mandate by successfully executing your office's long-term strategy of delivering value to stakeholders through the facilitation of transparency and enabling accountability in the public sector. As the National Council of Provinces, we would like to humbly acknowledge your ability to involve all relevant stakeholders throughout the trajectory of your work and employing every effort to learn from them. Your conduct was never adversarial, but rather exuded the necessary firmness in your leadership posture by fervently impressing upon Parliament and all the relevant stakeholders the need to work cohesively to implement solutions. This is indeed a true testament to the fact that the Auditor-General's office was run by a very transformative leader whose visionary leadership sought to advance and adherence to good governance practices. The value system that you have successfully inculcated was of respect, self-discipline, integrity, and a commitment to serve. Your audit work was indeed always based on areas that have the highest impact on the well-being of our people. As a result of your visionary leadership, your organization currently boasts 1,227 audit professionals, almost twice as many as 10 years ago. These successes are a result of your sustained effort and dedication over the past 7 years. Mr. Kimi Makwetu, Mankaya, allow me to bid you farewell. You have invariably been a model of courage and ability. The impact of your work leaves an indelible mark and has set the Aegis Office on a clear trajectory to advance transformation and good governance practices in South Africa. With leaders as your good self, our cause can never be lost. In conclusion, to the incoming leadership of the institution, bear in mind that Chapter 9 institutions have a very important mandate. Their role is particularly significant now because the constitutional democracy in South Africa faces a number of specific interrelated challenges. If the Chapter 9 institutions are to fulfill their collective mandate and live up to the title of institutions supporting constitutional democracy, they must open up space for participation in the public life outside the government. They must ensure responsive and accountable government while fostering an environment of tolerance and trust as essential ingredients of the constitutional democracy. As envisaged by the Constitution, Chapter 9 institutions are expected to contribute towards the entrenchment of these values by what they do and how they form their functions. In short, we need Chapter 9 institutions independent, rigorous in overseeing the work of government, and relentless in pursuing transformation. I know that you will continue to serve South Africa with distinction wherever your next adventure leads you. But thank you for enabling us as Parliament to continue to pursue an outcome-based relationship with the Office of the General. You have been the third incumbent of the Office of the Auditor-General that I've worked with. But I must mention, Mr. Makwetu, it is very rare that we find people as humble as you are, as dedicated as you are, and someone who want to see change, who want to make sure that you ensure that the stakeholders that you work with, there is a lot of respect, there is a lot of common understanding, and there is a way that we can work with one another without undermining the cause and the vision and the mission of whoever you are working with. With that, I want to pay tribute to you, and I want to say to you, Hamba Pasha, Mkaya, I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is going to be Honorable WAS Ocamp.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of this House, Auditor-General Makwetu, it is really a privilege for me to say farewell today to a very remarkable man. Honorable Chairperson, when a Chapter 9 institution finds itself a leader of distinction, it is always a pity when their term ends. The country was, for example, saddened when Advocate Thuli Madonsela left the Public Protector's Office. And so it is with our Auditor General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu. It seems that Mr. Makwetu is just at the peak of his game. He had become a household name in South Africa, a man who is highly regarded for excellence, for his pursuit of good governance, and for his proactive approach. We are saying goodbye and thanking a person who has spent years of his life in honorable service to the people of South Africa. Honorable Chairperson, it is not by accident that Mr. Makwetu's name has become a household name in South Africa. His career has attracted the attention of many South Africans who prize justice, and more especially who wanted financial justice. He surely lived up to high moral standards, and throughout his tenure as Auditor General, he showed South Africans and his colleagues what it was to truly be independent. And what a career he has had. While the audit outcomes of municipalities and government departments and entities have declined, the Auditor General has never swayed from his demand for good governance and accountability. In my view, Ntati Makwetu, apart from all the good work that you have done, your biggest legacy will be the Public Audit Amendment Act. I can just imagine how frustrating it must have been for you over the years to have done your audits, made your findings and give your recommendations, just to see that very few of them were implemented. It was very worrying to have seen that the ANC government, as well as most ANC-run provinces and municipalities, could not implement your proposed measures that it would have led to better consequence management and, in turn, better governance in the interest of our people. Audit outcome after audit outcome, we saw how the Auditor General complained about the appointment of people who did not have the required qualifications. We saw how you complained about poor management by senior officials. And we also saw how you continuously reported and condemned the constant occurrence of corruption. Your insistence that the Office of the Auditor General be given some teeth to ensure that accountability results in consequence management paved the way for the Public Audit Amendment Act, which will hopefully lead to better governance in our country. Unfortunately, we have yet to see it applied successfully. But, Mr. Makwetu, irrespective of that, you laid the foundation thereof, and for that, we thank you. Honorable Chairperson, we recently learned that the Special Investigating Unit is investigating 2/3 of government's expenditure on the coronavirus pandemic for possible corruption. We can just hope that Mr. Makwetu and his officers' push for good governance, as well as their unwavering condemnation of corruption, will lead to harsh consequences for those cadres who are again responsible for these horrendous acts of corruption. Honorable Chairperson, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. And so it is as well with Mr. Makwetu's role as Auditor General. We do, however, take comfort in the fact that the institution is bigger than the individual. We have got confidence that Mr. Makwetu leaves behind a team of principled, hard-working and uncompromising staff. Ntati Makwetu, you leave behind a track record of excellence, to be used as a benchmark for your successor, who, by the way, has got big shoes to fill. You leave behind a piece of legislation that will help to correct South Africa's trajectory for years to come. Tati Makwetu, you have served your country with distinction. Your duty to us as a nation is done. We thank you for the honorable way in which you have executed your responsibilities. You truly are a man of integrity, and we wish you happiness, success, and a long life in your new adventures. Long live Kimi Makwetu, long live. Thank you so much.
Long live.
Yeah.
Malibongwe. Malibongwe.
Thank you very much. We
Mangan.
now move on to Hamletan. Let's hear you.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and the outgoing Auditor General. On behalf of my organization, Economic Freedom Fighters, allow me, Chairperson, to say it is not every day that the country is united in honor of an exceptional individual and a committed public servant. We join the rest of the country too in showing our gratitude to the outgoing Auditor General, Kimi Makwetu, who has served the country with absolute dignity even during difficult times. It was during his tenure that the need for a tighter legislative framework was developed in order to hold those ignoring the recommendations of the Auditor General to account. Today, almost all municipalities are dysfunctional. Most provincial and national government departments have been looted dry by the leeches ruling our nation. The Office of the Auditor General has consistently flagged these irregularities, consistently made recommendations about improving prudent use of financial resources. But these have been ignored repeatedly by the gang of looters. The result now is that we have a completely collapsed form of governance. Had those in power implemented the recommendations of the Auditor General, those responsible for looting our nation will be in jail, and most of our municipalities will be functional. As you leave, Mr. Makwetu, you must leave knowing you did what you could. It was the ruling leeches who failed you and your office. We honor you for the role you have played in revealing the extent of the rot in the public service and wish you well for your future endeavors. We also would like to pledge our support to the incoming Auditor General, Ms. Tsakani Maluleke, and urge her to continue the good work of the Office of the Auditor General. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's the whole truth.
We will move on to Honorable Mfael. Numzan Mfael.
The elephant.
Yes, Honorable Chairperson Nyambose, SIFP would like to pay a deserved tribute to our Auditor General of South Africa, Mr. T.K. Makwetu, for his outstanding work as custodian of our Constitution. The Auditor General is a Chapter 9 institution with constitutional mandate to advance financial accountability in the public sector. The Auditor General strengthened constitutional democracy through its auditing of the expenditure of all spheres of government. Its primary function lies in ensuring that accurate accounting procedures and standards are followed regarding government's expenditure and revenue reported. The Auditor-General stellar work highlights the huge problem our country is facing with irregular expenditure in municipalities, currently standing at 32 billion. The Auditor-General work to assist the improving the financial well-being in the public sector must be respected at all times, as it protects the country's economic status from disinvestment and most importantly protects the public from rampant corruption. In some instances, Auditor-General, his office could even enter the offices of some municipalities because their presence there was going to expose the corruption that were taking place in some of the municipalities. Therefore, Mr. Auditor-General became Makwetu, the real ambassador for good governance. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Go well and go share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Detroit.
Honorable Chair. The Freedom Front Plus would like to take this opportunity to express its gratitude to the retiring Auditor-General Makwetu for his 7 years of exemplary service to the nation. His non-renewable term has come to an end. It has not been an easy job, particularly in performing audits in the chaotic world of the local government. He has performed excellently and has been a great asset to the nation, but sadly the law hasn't given him teeth enough to ensure that government is held to account. We wish him and his family everything of the best in their road to the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now listen to the African National Congress, Honorable Yunus Karim.
Thank you, Chairperson. We also often hear that the state is weak and dysfunctional, and the people in key positions are useless, corrupt, and no more than ANC hacks. But who in their wildest imaginations, Chairperson, can say that about Mr. Makwetu, or most of the auditors, if not all the Auditor General since 1994? Frankly, not only he and his predecessors have served the country tremendously well, but in many senses, they are world-class. As indeed, Chairperson, there have been other institutions and those who've led them. Think of the Constitutional Court, whose judgments are studied at universities from Harvard to Oxford to major universities on the continent and elsewhere in the developing world. As also the IEC, yes, there have been some glitches, but it remains a world-class institution, and until recently, SARS too. And of course, National Treasury, with its openness and transparency of budgeting, it's amongst the top 3 in the world even now. And it led, in many senses, the Public Finance Management Act. And just look too as who Chairperson is to succeed Mr. Makwetu. Ms. Sakani Maluleke is not only very young, she's a she, the first to lead the Auditor General's office. And actually, she and her predecessors break all the racial and gender stereotypes about who's skilled to manage statistics and figures and finances and auditing. Yes, Chairperson, we say that we have many problems in our country. Let's admit that the ANC does, the government does. But let's also recognize world-class when we see it. And Chairperson, I will not respond to the petty politics of the other parties. This isn't the occasion. Mr. Makwetu, we are very proud of you and we wish you well in your future. Now, let me go on to say that Mr. Makwetu's influence, the 80s influence has been tremendous. If you look, for example, since we're talking about auditing, Chairperson, our auditing standards are amongst the highest, the best in the world, despite the levels of corruption. And the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors has many times been awarded by world bodies, including international relevant bodies, for being responsible for excellent standards overall, as indeed is our country and parliament. And right now, the powers of the auditors are being amended in a bill before the NA that will come shortly to the NCOP. The Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors will have its powers strengthened through the Auditing Profession Amendment Bill. It can carry out search and seizures. It can also investigate and secure information for those investigations or disciplinary processes, and power to issue warrants for entering and searching of premises. The current AG will be remembered most perhaps for his influential role in the change of the Public Audit Act. The concerns that he and others have expressed over the years, Chairperson, that the reports that they present so assiduously and make public and present to our parliamentary committees, as no less than a month ago also yet again, the reports on municipalities, there are no consequences for failures, for material irregularities, unauthorized spending, irregular and other wasteful expenditure and so on. Now, this change has now given, as Ms. Lucas, our Deputy NCOP chairperson, I echo everything she says in an excellent input at the beginning, and she's covered a lot of the ground that I would have otherwise covered. But it gives them increasing power, the Auditor's Office, to actually ensure consequences and remedial action if such consequences don't come. It gives, as the auditor says, more teeth to his office. They can issue certificates of debt to accounting officers responsible for disregarding auditing regulations, which result in the misuse of funds. And the amendments to the Act also give the necessary power to take any remedial action and issue a certificate of debt. Auditor-General referral powers on material irregularities to relevant public bodies for further investigations, issue a certificate of debt, as I said. Now, what the Auditor-General is very well known for is his stress on the findings being accessible in simple language, Chairperson, and that's very, very important. We thank you, AG, for that. He wants, as he said once, that it's not just economists or accountants that read his report or MPs, but it should be understood by the person who opens up a tap and no water comes out. How evocative, Chairperson, that is. Then on termination of auditing contracts held with KPMG and Nkonki, he decided, as his office, that they withdraw involvement of both of them in any public entity. In the case of Nkonki, it related to Mr. Salim Issa, the notorious Salim Issa, that's once again in the media this week and late last week for his errant behavior. He's hiding somewhere in Dubai or wherever it is. He's run away from his own country, which alone is an admission of guilt, Chairperson. So on the COVID-19 corruption report, what is there for me to say? If not excellent work again by your office, AG. On municipalities, many of your reports have in fact led to this very House adopting Section 139 interventions or supporting those that have been adopted. Excellent work again. Now, we really, Chairperson, should welcome the new AG. It seems to me she will keep the same standards, unlike some hints by a certain member in this House, that we've had until now. She, in fact, stood out because of experience, the report from that committee, which chose her notes. And she has the necessary leadership skills in public finance, management, auditing, and the like. She's been deputy, in fact, since 2014, and she's been in the area, both in the private and public sector, of auditing for 20 years. So we would like to say, Chairperson, that ultimately, the best tribute we can pay to the AG is to actually take seriously the work of the AG's office. That's the biggest tribute, Auditor-General, we can pay to you. And personally, Chairperson, I know younger people feel that you and I and others of our generation shouldn't be here. But the one perhaps advantage is that we know some of these people over the years. And I personally know, obviously, Mr. Makwetu before he became AG in his many roles, and he's excelled in all of them, actually. So it's a personal loss, if you like, for those of us who've known him for so long. We wish him well. We have no doubt, Chairperson, that wherever he goes, he will be huge credit. Hopefully in some role in the public sector or semi-public sector, but even in the private sector, he'll retain his commitment to excellence, anti-corruption, high auditing standards. There too, he can, in his whatever job the law allows him to do at some or other stage, he will play his role and do voluntary work as well. So, Mr. Kane, we wish you well too. I'm not sure, Chairperson, why you are laughing, but There is no greater tribute, Mr. Makwetu, we can pay you. Thank you. I know we're about to cut you short, but for once we should just allow the flow, Chairperson. This is too important an occasion. And finally, Chairperson, this is almost Mandela-esque. Well, forget the EFF for now. Mandela-esque in its moment. Never since 2019, last year when we got here, have the parties in this house shown such a level of similarity in their approach. Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you, Mr. Makwetu, to put it mildly.
Thank you very much, Honorable Karim.
Yes.
Now, we do not want to be seen to putting on any pressure on the AG, but I'm sure members will agree with me that we may ask Honorable Makwetu, should he wish to do so, just to say a few words.
Yes.
Honorable Makwetu, Auditor-General, do you wish to say anything?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to all the members for the wonderful words of encouragement. They echo the feeling of all the staff in the office. I have visited them in the most recent days, saying my farewells to them across the country and in all the provinces. And the one key message that they are coming up with is exactly what the members of the NCOP have said. They say to me that the journey they've been on in this office have given them a new sense of purpose. These are young South Africans, Chairperson, who have qualified at our universities, signed up to be public sector auditors, aligned themselves to the development of the jurisprudence of the audit institution, and they are equally excited about the journey forward because now they are getting counted among many professionals in public institutions who add value to their citizens, who add value to society. And in echoing the words of Honorable Karim, I would like to also say, in looking after the institution as we go forward, it will be important to also jealously guard for those young people who do this work on behalf of the whole country. Because at times, some people think that they can abuse them at any time. But I think they are all resolute about the fact that they carry out a constitutional mandate on behalf of all of us as South Africans. And Baumasondo, in those words, the zama ukubayaleza nabo, so that as you ponder the future, you keep them in mind, because tomorrow, some of them have already told me that they are positioning themselves to be the Auditor-General of this country, even if it happens in 2050. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very
Viva
much.
Kimi, viva!
Yes, thank you.
Viva Kimi, viva!
We will then proceed, firstly by making an announcement that after this sitting, the NCOP delegates should remain for a briefing on the provincial week. Remain for the briefing on the provincial week. So please remain in the platform. There being no other business, our work has come to an end for the day, and the House is adjourned. But as I've said, the NCOP delegates must please remain behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Long live the Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Makwetu.
Thank you, Stan.